A 41-year-old man was stabbed and moderately wounded by a Palestinian attacker while riding a bus in the neighborhood of Ramot in the northeast of the capital. The assailant used a sharpened screwdriver in the assault. After the driver stopped the bus, a passerby armed with a gun shot and wounded the attacker, who was in serious condition. A Hamas spokesman praised the attack as a, quote, act of heroism and a response to the crimes of the occupation against the holy places of Islam and Christianity in Jerusalem. Well, for more, we're joined by Yaakov Lappin, military and strategic affairs analyst at the Miriam Institute. He speaks to us from Rehovot. Yaakov, thanks for joining us. I guess the concern here about today's attack is whether this could be the start of a renewed wave, similar to that we saw earlier in a few months ago that ultimately had 19 people killed.
That's right. That is the chief concern in the security establishment this evening. And that's why they're going to be doing everything they can to try and disrupt the flow, to stop this chain reaction of one attack leading to another. And while the intelligence tools that are available to the security establishment in stopping this kind of unorganized lone wolf terrorism are rather limited, they were able to do it in March. They were able to do it during the terror wave of 2015 and 16. So they're going to be going back to those same tools now to try and stop this flow before it once again picks up momentum with casualties.
All right, and we're going to have more on the attack. We're going to go live to the Jerusalem hospital where the victim is later. But stay with us, Yaakov, because there was more Palestinian violence earlier in the day as a bullet was fired from Gaza towards the small community of Nativ HaAsara that sits just opposite Gaza's northern border. That bullet hitting a locksmith's workshop. Now, no one was hurt, and it's not clear if the shot was intentional or stray fire. But in response, the Israeli military struck Hamas outposts that sit on the border. Now, this is after the IDF blew up a Hamas observation post right opposite Nativ HaAsara a month ago that has since been rebuilt. And Yaakov, like I said, we don't know if the shot was intentional, but it's a little suspicious because the residents of Nativ HaAsara have been very nervous, especially about that outpost that sits right across its border.
It's very suspicious. Shots were also fired on Friday night, in addition to two waves of rocket attacks that targeted southern Israel from Gaza. And again, we're seeing, just like we saw on Friday night and on Saturday morning, a very firm Israeli response, a zero-tolerance response, airstrikes, hitting Hamas targets, not waiting to find out who is behind this incident, in the same way that on Friday night, the Israeli defense establishment did not wait to find out who fired those rockets. And in fact, in subsequent assessments, it surfaced that it was probably not Hamas that fired those rockets on Friday night. So the Israeli policy is very clear. Organizational responsibility for these attacks is not important. There's going to be a message of deterrence through very, very firm airstrikes that result from every one of these cross-border attacks and incidents.
All right, well, we'll have to see if anything more develops down there. But stay with us again, Yaakov, because now we're going to move from the Gaza border to the Lebanon border, where Prime Minister Yaakov Lappin and Defense Minister Benny Gantz today visited the IDF's Northern Command and met with soldiers manning that frontier. Now, this is a day after the Israeli military shot down a Hezbollah drone that had crossed the border. Now, Lappin told accompanying reporters, quote, Israel is interested in Lebanon being a stable and prosperous neighborhood that is neither a platform for Hezbollah terrorism nor an Iranian tool. The activity of Hezbollah endangers Lebanon, its citizens, and their well-being. And later in the day, Prime Minister Lappin also took a flight over the Karish natural gas drilling platform in the Mediterranean. Of course, Israel shot down a Hezbollah drone that a few weeks ago had approached that area. And Yaakov, clearly, again, a message being sent by the Israeli leadership to Hezbollah not to push things too far on the border, because it seems they have been testing Israel a little bit in the last few weeks.
Absolutely. And the message here is even firmer rhetorically, because Israel did restrain itself by simply responding to those earlier drone incidents in the Karish platform area by shooting them down and not taking any offensive action following that defensive reaction. So Israel is very interested in sending clear rhetorical messages of deterrence to Hezbollah. One of the assessments here in Israel is that Hezbollah itself is not interested in an escalation, but it is itself engaged in a messaging and propaganda campaign, which is mostly targeting its own Shiite base in Lebanon. And Hezbollah is trying to market itself as the guardian of Lebanon, making sure that Lebanon gets a good deal in these negotiations with Israel over maritime borders. And if a deal actually does come to pass, Hezbollah can always turn around and say, well, look, the pressure that we placed on Israel made sure that Lebanon got a good deal. So it's a risky strategy. If that's what Hezbollah is doing, could always backfire. This area has proven that. And we've seen both sides managing the escalation in a way that's designed to send messages, but not to go over the edge into an uncontrolled escalation.
Right. It's definitely walking a fine line there on the northern border. Yaakov Lappin, thanks for joining us.